Yeah, this looks okay. Okay. In 2006, Pixar released their 7th feature film, Cars. The story is simple. A selfish big city car gets stranded in a humble small town where he gets arrested, makes friends, learns about race car history, and gets a hot girlfriend. The movie ends with him racing in the final championship race, but instead of winning the race because of all the heartfelt moral lessons he's learned, he chooses to help his fellow racer instead. The first Cars film was so successful that Pixar went on to make 2 more Cars films, and Disney themselves went on to make a film called Planes that is also set in the Cars universe. Now, what I have just described sounds like just a wholesome collection of films about sentient vehicles and the adventures they go on. Wrong! The Cars trilogy is probably the most cursed, most awful, most aggravating piece of cinema to exist in the entire multiverse. For the sake of this video, we won't be covering Planes because it isn't Pixar, but everything I'm about to say about the Cars trilogy also applies to Planes, as they do happen in the same cinematic universe. The Cars trilogy is nothing short of what I like to call an audience assault, where unless your brain is completely turned off, these films will end you. Even if you think about it for any more than like 3 seconds, it will cause catastrophic waves of damage to your psyche. Luckily, you don't have to think about it. I've already thought about it, and now I am presenting to you my findings. And this is not for the sake of your entertainment. This is so that I don't have to suffer alone with these insidious car thoughts. Section 1, Car Anatomy. These cars have such a confusing and troubling anatomy that even after this full week of me trying to piece together how it works, I still have no idea. Number 1, the eyes. Cars have just one big eye with 2 irises and 2 pupils where their windshield should be. The eyes are not behind the windshield, they are the windshield, because the cars who use welding things, the welder cars, they have to use welding masks, meaning that they're protecting their eyes from the heat, or at least I think that's what welding masks do. And if the cars were behind a windshield, they would already have glass in front of them, meaning that the eyes are the windshield. If you were to touch it, it would be squishy like your eyeballs. The cars can also have vision problems, because like one car wears a monocle and the other car wears glasses. So like the cars can have the same like vision impairments that we do. Number 2, the mouths. Despite being filled with gas in the normal gas tank location, the cars still have mouths? Like, they obviously use these mouths for, like, communication and talking, but, like, also just, like, for recreational purposes. Like, all the cars have teeth and tongues as demonstrated, because, like, Mater eats wasabi and he freaks out because it's spicy, meaning that they have taste buds, and that they eat food because he calls it ice cream. So, like, he's clearly eating ice cream. But, like, outside of that one scene in Japan, the only thing we ever see them eat is just, we see them drinking oil. Like, they have cans of oil that they drink out of, like, little straws. So it's like, what are the mouths for? They're not ingesting anything but oil, but like, wouldn't oil go in the same place that the gas goes? And then, in Cars 2, Finn McMissile, when he goes underwater, he has to get a scuba mask out and start breathing. So they also have a respiratory system, and that means they like require oxygen, but that doesn't make any sense because they have gas to go in. Why would they need oxygen unless they had like lungs, but they don't have noses, which means they're always breathing with their mouths. We could also like figure out the fact that they have like respiratory systems by the fact that when Lightning's training really hard, he gets out of breath. He's like breathing. Why do you need to breathe? You're a car. Why would you need oxygen if you have gas and oil and food? That's already 3 energy sources. Number 3 is what really got me. The sexes. The cars have sexes. No, it's not just like there are some cars who use he, him pronouns and some cars use she, her pronouns. No, they have just as rigid of a gender binary and false assumption of a sex binary, just like we do. In the opening first 5 minutes of Cars 1, we see gendered bathrooms. There are 2 gendered bathrooms. And then in Cars 2, this is like a plot point. Mater goes into the men's room and the purple spy car lady, I don't remember her name, she's like nervous about going in there to like meet him. All the cars theoretically have the same parts. And like in that men's room, there's no urinals or anything, it's just stalls. And like, I thought the whole point of gendered bathrooms in the first place was that like women didn't want to see like dicks everywhere, so they like got their own restroom, or is that wrong? That might be wrong. But like, either way, there's no logical reason for cars to have these gendered bathrooms. When a car goes to a restroom, it's because they're leaking oil, but like several cars use the restroom and there's like even a big queue, so like how many cars are leaking oil? Is that normal? Do I just not know how cars work? Is that just a thing that they just randomly leak oil like as often as we need to go to the bathroom? I mean, instead of like building all these restrooms to handle oil leaks, why wouldn't you just stop people from leaking in the first place? Although maybe there's more money in like leak management than leak prevention. Car capitalism. But now back to the sex and gender thing. In Cars 3, the one old lady race car said she had to get into racing illegally because back in the day girl cars couldn't race. But why? There is no physical difference between a girl car and a boy car. It's just like what type of car, not what gender of car. Girl cars shouldn't have faced the same type of sexism human girls face because the whole reason that started was men on average were stronger, so they just kind of took over. But cars in this universe, it isn't true because no matter your car gender, it doesn't matter what type of car you are. Number 4, cars are manufactured. The main plot of Cars 2 is surprisingly not racing. It is Mater going on an international spy mission to stop shitty cars from making the renewable energy market go out of business. And by shitty cars, I don't mean cars with poor morals, although that does also apply. I mean cars who are just like bad. Like they just can't drive. Like one of the cars literally is always towed around on a tow truck. That's how Mater's able to sneak in. And the reason that there's so many just like bad cars out there is because their manufacturers stopped making their model of car parts so they can't fix themselves. Which sounds like a fucking dystopia. First of all, this confirms in the car universe they are made and not born, although throughout Cars 2 they are discussing things like make and model, not birth. But that aside, if the big manufacturers stop making your parts, you have no choice other than to cease to function. Imagine if you were like diabetic and one day you just go into the doctor, but your doctor's like, oh yeah, they stopped making synthetic insulin. Sucks to be you, and like you just have to die. That's what this car world is. If your manufacturer doesn't make you any more parts, you're dead. Bye. Literally, the second your maker model becomes unprofitable, the manufacturers stop making parts for you. Like, I always wondered watching these films, like, how do the cars die? Because, like, in our world, like, there's plenty of old cars around that still work and function, so, like, how are these cars dying? But now I get it! The cars die because whatever sick fucks are in charge, they just stop manufacturing parts for cars. Number 5, the cars have seats. They have seats inside of them. A direct quote from one of the racing commenters in Cars 1 is hotter than a black leather seat on a sunny day, meaning the cars have seats inside of them and they can feel the temperature of them. What I need to know is, where are the car's brains? Like, they're not under the hood because we know that for a fact that is where their engines are, and like they can't be directly behind the windshield because that's where the seats are. Seats for who? Like, who is sitting in these cars? Why do they need seats? Why do they need doors either, or windows? If these cars are manufacturing themselves, why do they continue to make human accommodations in a world where it's just cars without humans? Section 2, car history. The cars have a pope. These cars have a leader of the Catholic Church. We see this car pope for a split second in Cars 2, but the car pope ruins everything. The cars have Catholicism, and since they also have Queen Elizabeth II, we can assume the whole Anne Boleyn fiasco also occurred, meaning all other denominations of Christianity exist as well. And because Christianity exists, we can only reasonably conclude Judaism exists and Islam exists, as all three of the Abrahamic religions are all directly tied to the existence of one another. Sally also refers to Radiator Springs as hillbilly hell, meaning the concept of hell exists, meaning religions must exist. Now here's, the car pope has a cross. The symbol of Christianity in the Cars universe is still a cross. This means that their car Jesus, just like our Jesus, was crucified on a cross. Here's where it gets wild. The car's make and model corresponds to their time period. Older cars are older cars. Fillmore's from the 60s, therefore his is a 60s style car. That means all of our car history could have only started late 1800s when cars were first invented. Or vehicles could have been sentient before that, but the manufacturer's eugenics could have just killed them off. So this implies that Car Jesus wasn't a car at all. He was probably like a cart or a wagon or whatever had wheels in biblical times. That's what Jesus was. A wooden sentient cart was crucified on a human-shaped cross, and all of his other sentient cart followers formed a religion out of it.
Okay, that's weird.
Yeah, right?
They have a cross in the thing?
They have a Pope in the Pope vehicle with the crosses on it.
That's really weird.
It is really weird. But it's not just the Cars Pope from Cars 2 that breaks your mind, it's also Japan. In Cars 2, we see Japan as it exists now, in a post-Americanized state, and because Japan is like this, that means Americans had to have been in Japan after World War II, meaning the Cars had World War II. And if we were counting planes as canon, that also means World War II because they literally have a World War II flashback sequence with one of the planes. So, there was a car Hitler, and car Nazis, and a car Stalin, and a car Mussolini, and a car Churchill, and a car everybody. Who is car Hitler racist towards? Because last time I checked, the only car races there are the ones where they go fast. Like, how could car Nazis exist when the color of, like, every car is different? Like, were they racist against certain colors, or, like, certain models, or, like, a combination of both? Because, like, we know car religion exists. Did they kill 7 million Jewish cars in a car holocaust? How can a car be ethnically Jewish? Because in the Holocaust, it wasn't just people actively practicing Judaism. If even one of your grandparents was Jewish, that was enough for you to be persecuted as well. But how can a car be that? What determines car ethnicity or race? How does car genetics work? How can a car be a white supremacist? Like, there aren't even that many white cars in the movies. Like, they're such a small minority. Like, there's just too many color options for cars for there to be the car master race. And that's another thing. The cars can change their color at will, and like they just paint themselves. I'm like, in our society, we generally frown upon like white people getting so aggressively tan that they look a different race, but like cars can just change their color, their flames, their stripes, their everything. Because we know for a fact car racism exists. There's a car sheriff. And like, fun fact, the entire American policing system is based purely in racism, so like, it existed, and it still exists, seemingly somehow. Like, the car sheriff has a sheriff's star, and the sheriff's star is just a rebranded slave catcher star, meaning that not only these cars can be car racist, but also there was a car slave trade. And like, in this universe, boats are sentient too, so like, they had to be like in on it and okay with it. So like, now we're bringing the boats into things. Can we be racist against different types of vehicles? But again, the whole American slave trade thing, that was before cars existed. So like, these were all carts. These were all wooden carts and wagons or horses. Oh my God, what if the cars were horses? Because we know animals existed at one point in the Cars universe. Dinoco's symbol is a dinosaur, and in Cars 2, they discuss how burning fossil fuels is bad for the environment, proving not only the existence of dinosaurs, but also global warming. Maybe there's a car Greta Thunberg. But since these dinosaur fossils work the exact same way ours do and they produce oil, the Cars universe once habited organic life. I mean, obviously there are still like plants and stuff, but like at one point on this car planet, dinosaurs roamed the earth, but for some reason there's no organic animals left in present day. The Cars also have nuclear weapons because like Fillmore exists and he's a hippie, and so like the whole anti-war hippie movement happened, so that means every American war endeavor happened. And so then you get the question of, well, are the nukes sentient? Were the atomic bombs dropped on Japan sentient? We know that the plane that got them there was, and we also know that the Hindenburg was sentient, the Titanic was sentient, the plane that crashed into the Twin Towers was sentient, and we know 9/11 happened because Mater goes through airport security. Section 3, miscellaneous. Why does the Queen of England knight Mater with her car antenna? That would also mean not only do cars have internal radios that require an antenna, but also antenna function as this universe versions of swords? In the final scene of Cars 2, how is Mater able to outdrive McQueen? Literally, Lightning McQueen is going at his top speed and Mater is like driving faster than him. In Cars 3, Cruz talks about training to be a race car as a kid, which means cars have childhoods? How do they have childhoods? If they're manufactured, they would stay the same size their whole life. Since the trains are sentient, but they're always on a track, does that make them slaves? Like, they appear to be just as sentient as the cars are, but they're forced to spend their entire existence on tracks, carrying cars around. During the disguise scene in Cars 2, Mater gets disguised as a vampire, meaning vampires exist in this universe. And he gets fangs that vampires have, but like, why would vampires need fangs? Because like, teeth can't sink into metal, but like, also cars don't have blood, so what are the vampires even like after? Is it oil? All cars drink oil, but like, What are the vampires? In Cars 1, the reporter asked Lightning if he's been in rehab, meaning car drugs exist, and cars can apparently get, like, car addicted to these car drugs and then go to car rehab. Section 4, my theory. None of this made sense to me until I had this epiphany, this, like, thought entered my brain that clicked all these pieces into place, and I was like, oh. I'm going to share with you now my theory on the Cars universe. So when you're watching a musical, the music happening is non-diegetic, and I'm going to quickly explain what that means. There is diegetic music and there is non-diegetic music. Diegetic music is music that the characters themselves can hear. It's music actually coming from the world. Non-diegetic music is like the soundtrack, music that only the audience can hear. A good example of this would be like the main theme of Star Wars is non-diegetic because the characters can hear it, whereas the Cantina Band is diegetic because the characters can. So in the case of musical theater, all the songs being sung by the characters are actually non-diegetic. There are a few musicals that break this trope, but on the whole, all of the music the characters sing are used as a meta-narrative to just communicate the story to the audience, but we can understand that the characters aren't actually singing. We know that if this isn't a parallel world where people can just sing, this is a parallel world where a barber kills people, or an alien comes down and grows into a giant plant. But the characters are not actually singing. So if we apply the same system of using a meta-narrative to portray something to Cars, suddenly it makes sense. What if all the cars are all humans, but they're being portrayed as cars because all of these people's lives are so intrinsically tied to their cars? In musical theater, the main purpose of the music is to express emotion that is just too great to explain with just words. That is why characters begin to sing, because that is the only way they can effectively communicate to the audience what they're feeling or what is happening. So, what if, because Cars is about, like, humans who race in cars or humans who drive tow trucks, what if the most effective way to explain how tied to these cars these people are was to just portray them as their cars? Because all of the buildings in the Cars universe are human-sized. They're human-sized, just the doors are made bigger for cars. But this would make a lot more sense if we realize, oh no, this is our world. It's just a story being told to us about humans, and because their lives revolve so much around their vehicles, they are being shown as their vehicles. And so whenever we see a sentient vehicle, we can understand, oh no, that train's not a slave, it's just a train driver, like, in his train. But, like, this is just a way of storytelling showing us that these people rely so heavily on their vehicles that they basically are them. It could even be just like a commentary on American society and how car-driven everything is and how everyone needs a car. And if you are in America and you don't have a car, you basically can't go anywhere. And so I had this theory and it was great and it was amazing. I was like, this explains everything. And then I remembered these! The birds are planes and the bugs are also cars. So nope, it's not, no, I guess it's just not, because if it was only humans being portrayed as cars and vehicles, then it would be fine. But no, the animals, the tractors are cows, the beetles are beetles, and the little planes are pigeons. The Cars universe makes no sense. It makes no sense. I don't understand how they made even more than 3 films about this. It makes literally no sense.